Name is I'm Osei-Frimpong, and you are watching this week's Funky Academic. I hope you missed me. I missed you. And today we're going to talk about mental health in the black community because we have problems. We have mental health problems. I know everybody wants me to talk about R. Kelly and what some nonsense that went on Lifetime.
I didn't even hear about the Lifetime stuff.
I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna talk about R. Kelly here. I will say, keep in mind, one, he's a victim. He was sexually abused from like ages 8 to 15. There's a great GQ article about it. Sexual abuse from 8 to 15. And you know what sexual abuse victims do? They abuse.
Yeah.
I will tell you, and you should know this, abuse victims abuse. So you abuse one R. Kelly's going to abuse like 80 people, and that's how this thing gets this spread like a virus. So anybody who talks about R. Kelly but doesn't mention that he himself was abused by a caregiver, I think it was an aunt, from 8 to 18. It's in a GQ article. Once again, you can just put in R. Kelly and GQ and read the article. Is not getting this right. Also, you know who else was abused? Chris Brown and Lil Wayne. So do you see a trend here? I think the trend might be abuse victims abuse themselves. And that's very important if we're actually serious. So if we want to just punish, that's, you know, it's great. But if we actually want to stop the system of abuse, we need to look at the alarming number of men, and especially black men, who are victims of abuse. And this is deep because, you know, we started out being, you know, bucks on a stud farm.
Yeah.
And like the generations of abuse and just and degradation hasn't really left. So we need to address that if you're serious about ending abuse. If you just want to just throw people in jail, then like I guess throw like that, you could do that too.
I'm gonna need y'all still to pay more attention to some of the other abusers.
Right. We just need to we need to ask. First time you hear about someone being abused or abused or being abused or being abuser, ask if they were themselves abused. Because the goal is the cycle. Unless you just want to put black people in jail. Then like carry on America. But if you actually want to stop the cycle, we have to look at the alarming number of abusers who were themselves abused, and sometimes by men, sometimes by women, and we need to figure out like how to stop that, rather than just find a reason to, I don't know, to put black men in jail. Although you know, if someone needs to go to jail, R. Kelly's a good candidate for that. But more importantly, let's figure out the system of abuse, because R. Kelly as an abuse victim is not an anomaly. As an abuse victim who abuses, he is the rule. So that's all I'm going to say about R. Kelly. Now let's talk about mental health in the black community, because there are mental health problems in the black community. And it leads to all sorts of untoward consequences. There are mental health problems in the black community. And you need to know this about mental health. In general, we're talking about 3 different varieties. One is like driven by biology. Right? There's something off in your chemicals, you don't process information right, and lead you to do things you ought not do for reasons you ought not have. Right? It's driven biology. 2, you're biologically disposed, but then there's social conditions that trigger that disposition. For example, you all know about alcoholics who like have the genetic whatever for alcoholism, but like they never have a drink, so they're never actually actual alcoholics, or just potential alcoholics. So those are people who have the biological disposition, but are never triggered socially. And then 3, there is the variety of mental health problem that's driven mainly by your social circumstances that then come and inflect your biology. I mean, the big example about this is going to be lead in the water, or hookworms, or other sort of social systems that then go and like change your brain. Because as more and more research comes out, it turns out that things that happen to you actually change your brain chemistry and change the way you process information. So if you grow up in a stressful environment for a variety of reasons, it actually changes who you are. Like there's epigenetics coming out. Like there's all of these things that says the relationship between the social conditions and your brain. It's not a one-to-one relation. I mean, it's not an easy relationship.
But
so, yes?
I was going to say, but at some point before you continue on, we might want to roll the intro.
Oh, yes. So, yes, 3 different causes for mental health in the black community. Biology, biology plus social, and then social, which comes to change your biology. All right? So keep those in mind, and just know black people, we live very stressful lives, and insofar as we need therapists, it's not going to be, we need suburban white therapists the same way that black schools need suburban white teachers. As in, like, we don't need them that much. If you're going to be a black therapist, we're going to need you to know a little bit about that life. And without, hit the intro.
To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front. To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
Okay, so we're back talking about mental health in the black community. And I said, look, black people, we have mental health issues, but all therapy is not good therapy, if you should know this. I've kind of been blessed with respect to mental health, I think. My chemicals are all right. And then once I realized my problems were me.
That is a good start.
That is a good
place to start.
It's a good place to start because you got a lot of black people blaming themselves. I was never disposed to do that. So like, I'm not one of these cats who drove themselves crazy blaming themselves or fell for the plot that has black people blaming themselves, because there's an entire industry, a huge industry that's trained on getting black people, especially black men, to blame themselves for the stressors of being black, right?
Can we list the industries that don't do that?
Let's think about America's relationship with black people. The first priority of America with black people is to blame yourself for being black. So, look, I'm going to list a few names of black therapists who actually get this, black psychologists who actually get this, because psychology in general grew up in like Vienna with German guys dealing with upper middle class white women, and then in the late 20th century, it moved from German guys dealing with upper middle class white women to like white women dealing with other white women. And you know what? White women just indulge the shit out of other white women. So like, it's all, most of it's garbage. It's funny because when the Viennese guys were doing it, they're like, we gotta look at the relationship between the mother and the children, and the mothers and the children. And they were blaming mothers for a lot of things, possibly too much. And then when white women got in charge, they were like, women can't do anything wrong. So we stopped blaming mothers, and now like it's all just a love fest between like white women just go to other white women therapists just to indulge the shit out of each other. And that's fine, but like it can't be our life because we don't need that. We need revolution. And I think Frantz Fanon had this, the only therapy black people need is revolutionary therapy. Because any therapy that, like no amount of self-care, once you get back into the world. Okay, so Malcolm X said this, and it's right, about being poor. I mean, not being poor, being an alcoholic. Once you sober up, you're still poor. So the thing that like led you to drink is still going to be there. So black people, the thing that's actually making you insane is still going to be there after your vision board or your quest. Like if you're broke, you're still going to be broke at the end. And if you aren't free, it's often not because you're broke, but because everybody around you is broke, so you can't deal with anybody. So any solution that doesn't deal with getting everyone around you kind of like safe and right isn't going to be good for you, because you're being driven insane by the fact that you're living around a bunch of, kind of parasites.
So the way I always describe it is that you can't address your mental health if you are spending all your time trying to support 7 other people's mental health.
Yeah. And it's not their fault either.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a system that drives entire neighborhoods and communities and people crazy. But like, you can't be one sane person. There is no such thing as one sane person amongst a bunch of crazy.
Yeah, no, no.
No, so like we will get better mental health wise when like the level of the sea gets better. You can't be one person around a bunch of stressed out crazy people. That's just because sometimes you need things too, and you can't get it from them because they're stressed out and crazy. So like, getting in the struggle is the best thing Black people, and clarifying what the struggle is the best thing Black people can do for their mental health. And a therapist who gets that is the difference between a therapist who's actually about, health, and a therapist who's just like some, white woman from an MSW program. And like you've been to all. I assume you've been to a few different kinds. I'm talking to my associate producer. So like there's a difference.
So yeah, there is a difference. I have actually, can't lie, I've been really lucky.
Oh, okay.
My current therapist was my first real therapist, and she gets so many things that I expect her not to get as an older white woman. She's good at calling things what they are and recognizing it.
And that's what you need.
However, when I lived somewhere else, one of the first things I asked that therapist walking into his office was, how are you going to relate to me as a cisgendered straight white male and my problems? He gave a pretty solid answer. Because you are not a
cisgendered straight white male. If the people that don't have the camera on.
No. Sin is the large black, laughs too much.
He's a full-size Negro. He's not one of those medium. I'm a medium. I'm 5'8". I'm medium. He's full-size.
I'm 6 foot 250 right now.
Yeah, so he's a full-size black man who's is what he is.
And even talking about like this work. I remember someone saying that the way we do this work is not the right way. We should be out protesting. Well, the person who said that to me is aware that I suffer from extreme anxiety. And I had to reply to them, you're standing here protesting. I'm standing here wondering if the cops are going to get involved, if some random white person is going to have a gun and I get shot.
Right.
So no, I don't go to protests. Yes, I do work in politics and other things to make change, because that's how we have to do it.
Honestly, like I've been to all the protests. Like you've been to a few therapists. I've been to all sorts of protests. This is the work that's best for me. And I learned that in Chicago, actually, because in Chicago, when you protest, you're out there in the snow, and the person you're protesting is in like a climate-controlled environment. And you're out there in the snow, and they're in a climate-controlled environment, and you just feel like you're not doing this right. Like, there's a way, and it wasn't until Chicago, because I was out there in the streets in Oakland too, and that was different, because like the weather's But like when you're protesting in Chicago and you're out there and there's a blizzard, and then like it's like Rahm Emanuel and he's like in his climate control office, you feel like there's another way.
Looking down from his tower at you, like
sipping cappuccino. Like you feel like there's another way it's possible. So that's when I kind of realized that like there's a way in which you can go to protests, but use them as networking environments. Get names and addresses and stuff like that. Don't actually think that you're like, like dealing with like actually like being a thorn in Dr. Evil's side or whatever. So so that's my thing on protests. But we're talking about Black mental health and the idea that any therapist is a good therapist. That's not true. We don't need more therapists anymore. Like I said before, then we need more white suburban teachers in Black schools. So like, insofar as the wrong kind of therapist will actually confuse you, and I've heard this from Black clients who've gone to the wrong therapist, they end up being their therapist, making their therapist feel okay about being white. Well, so like you go to a therapist and then like you find yourself like coddling them about their insecurities, and it's and believe it or not, you won't get paid for that. So.
And I mean, it took me years to learn not to do that. It is not my job to coddle white people about stuff.
We need to make it our job. And if you want mental health, if you're just 10 steps, if you want mental health right now after watching this show, Black people, go tell a white woman to shut up. Do it. It's okay. It's all right. Just do it.
Hold on. Whistling got us lynched.
Right. I'm just saying, you'll feel emancipated.
Yeah, you will.
That's what freedom. You never know what freedom feels like.
Yeah, you'll be fired.
You'll also be fired and some other bad things, but you'll be a free Negro. You'll be a free Negro. So I don't have the graphic. I say that because there's a graphic that says we pretty much don't imprison white women. You know what? I'm going to get it.
Oh, the percentage.
Sin, come take my seat for a second.
Okay.
Because it's a great graphic, and I think it'll clarify a lot of things. So tell the people about mental health. Tell the people about mental health.
One of the things Army mentioned earlier is the 3 different kinds of mental health. You really don't have to show my hair right now, Andrea. Like it's all over the place, people. Haven't been there, a stylist. So I personally suffer from 2 of those, kind of the environmental as well as the chemical imbalance. Now, luckily, once someone finally convinced me it wasn't me, that there was a chemical imbalance I was never going to be able to fix on my own, I decided that I would give medicine a try. But as any of my doctors, and there are a couple of them, will tell you, I am not easy when it comes to medicines. You have to convince me that this is not the latest thing off and I'm being somebody's guinea pig at a pharmacy company. But once I was on the antidepressants, I could actually see how deep that hole I was in was. That's both helpful, and you're kind of like, oh, I survived down there. Holy. And, you go from there. But I think as a community, one of the things that we do have to look at is what type of therapist we're going to, not being ashamed of the fact that you need help and it could be something that you have nothing to do with, and kind of go from there. I'm very open about my mental health, just like I am about my status, because I think it's important for the community to see someone do that. But I'm also very comfortable being poor. So, I mean, that becomes the problem, if I get any more open about my mental health, I can pretty much guarantee that I better become the best writer in the world, because I'm never going to get a job again. And it's already getting hard. And mental health can affect other things. We are genetically predisposed to heart and blood pressure issues. Well, guess what? I have been taught every trick in the book about how to distance myself from my emotions. My physiology doesn't understand any of those tricks or care that I'm using them. I have a device in my chest that will fire to remind me, oh, your heart's gone crazy, and it'll keep firing until my heart stops being crazy. Record number 13 now. So with that, you have to not go into there. You're going to go into there thinking, well, some of this is my fault. Some of it might be, but most of it probably isn't. And that's the therapist you need to talk to. And it's not about placing fault. It's about finding solutions. Yep. Yeah. By the way, this graphic is one of my favorites that he shows.
Yeah, this is a good graphic. I'll tell you when to put it on. So I said before that, therapists right now are overwhelmingly white ladies. They go to an MSW program or they go to some other counseling program. And they might not be about your life because they might not understand your struggle. And here's the deal about when I say that white ladies might not understand your struggle. Put up the graph. Go put it on full screen. All right, so what this graph says... is we don't arrest white women. Like that's pretty much what the graph says.
I appreciate how you read that differently than I do, because I look at this graph and I'm like, we hate black men.
We hate black men. We hate black men, but it's also very important that we don't arrest white women. Like you have to be you have to sniff cocaine off of a police. That number says like you could do it off a police officer's shield.
Let me be clear.
And they'll be like, well, I guess she was confused.
I will be.
Look at that number.
I will be very clear that it's funny, over the holidays, I had a conversation with a affluent member of the white community, and he talked about candidates for office doing cocaine off the sheriff's wife's breast in his front yard.
Yeah, okay, so there we go. So you have to understand, we built an entire criminal justice system around black male guilt and white female innocence. Those two things are not they're not disconnected. It's not just black male guilt, it's white female innocence. So when you go to a therapist, you're going to a therapist who thinks that the world is organized for the most part, so that only bad things happen to bad people and everything else is in your head. Yeah, because we have an official system that says, like, I'm just looking at the numbers. You look at the numbers, it's a system that says white women can't do any harm. Like, they cannot actually do anything that bad. They cannot commit crimes. That's what that number says.
And I'm looking at that number and like wishing I could dig deeper into what they were actually arrested for and what their incomes look like.
I can tell you, I can't tell you, as someone who's been arrested a few times, I bet you those white women, they did it. They did it.
All two of them. Yeah, Betty and Veronica were in fact involved.
They did it. And they were like, I'd do it again. Like, they were unrepentant.
I mean,
by the time you were at, like, that's such a small number. Like, they must have gotten caught red hot. There must be videos.
And like, it take more than videos.
Think about that. Like, so we have an entire justice system that's organized. And that's not just a justice system. That's like the most violent system in America, the most stress-inducing system in America, organized around the presumption that white women can't do anything wrong.
I was just going to pull it when you were.
Yeah, so take that seriously when you think about your therapist, and maybe your therapist might not understand your struggle. Insofar as it's the same system that says that's organized around the presupposition that black men do everything wrong.
And let me be clear, black men, if you can't open with this conversation with your therapist, walk away.
Walk away. Walk away. They're not going to be about your life. They're just going to be confused you. Because one of the reasons you're crazy, black man, is because there's a teacher or a media exec who's been feeding you a narrative that it's your fault.
Yeah.
Since apparently preschool, because I looked at the data, and like we've been blaming black 4-year-olds for like 4-year-olds. Now I have a 6-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. By the time you're blaming black 3- and 4-year-olds for something, like, it ain't their fault. It's you. Like, there's nothing a black 4-year-old can do that shouldn't be mitigated by an adult or adults. So by the time you're calling black 4-year-olds criminal and 3-year-olds criminals, that means that, like, and kicking them out of preschool, which according to the data we do, black males especially, like, we are targeting them and confusing them and teaching them that it's their fault when we just don't know what to do with black people.
You can get kicked out of preschool. You can be suspended from preschool.
You can be suspended for preschool. Only if you're black. Yeah. If you're black, you're black.
I'm glad I grew up in D.C. during the 80s.
Where they still had enough black people.
Yeah, there were enough black people that you didn't get kicked out of school.
No, you can get kicked out of preschool, and we do. So there's an entire industry organized around teaching white women that they can't do anything wrong, and then those white women go into schools who teach black men that they can't do anything right. And so we have entire industries around, and then like white guys being enforcers of like both those rules. Like, white guys are the muscle. So remember, the school to prison pipeline doesn't just end with a cop arresting you. It starts with the elementary and preschool teacher like calling the cop to kick you out as a 4-year-old. So that is a maddening situation where it's the external circumstances that teach you that you're the problem, although that doesn't make sense with anything in your life. So it's just a recipe for depression, because if everything will land you in jail or if everything will get you punished, it's a recipe for not doing anything. So I'm going to talk about a few black therapists who actually get this right. One is an OG, an Algerian by the name of Frantz Fanon. He wrote 2 good books, The Wretched of the Earth and White Masks, Black Skin. 2, a guy named Bobby Wright out of Chicago. He wrote a series of books. He's famous for this idea of menticide, which is that, like, look, they're actually trying to get you to kill yourself, black men, black people. Menticide. It's a disease of society that's organized around getting you to hate yourself. And it's especially prevalent in the black community.
You will get no arguments from me on that topic these days.
Hate yourself or hate other black people. It calls a menticide, guy named Bobby Wright. 3rd one, Amos Wilson. Wrote a series of books, all of them great. It's just pretty much he's echoing Neely Fuller when, like, if you don't understand white supremacy, you are just set to be confused. Until you understand white supremacy, you're just going to be confused about everything around you. Everything else you think you know will only confuse you because it's made not for your clarity. It's made for often, you know, the innocence of white women. Like, it's often made to blame you, to have you blame yourself for your own disposability, black man. So, and this is good for the black community. And this is a guy named Amos Wilson. A series of books. They're all pretty good.
Here's one of the things I always jump in to be very clear about defending black, straight, especially cisgender black men who are straight. I am a gay man, so there is a difference. I recognize that as a gay man, I'm actually given slightly more privilege because they go, oh, he can be weaponized against them. And so literally, you know, we have organizations that Human Rights Campaign that doesn't seem to understand that everybody's human, because they'll gladly weaponize people of color. The first thing out of one of those members' mouths is, what about homophobia in the black community? Really? That's the first thing you think about when you think of the black community?
Not like the rampant poverty. One thing about homophobia in the black community, as wide as it might be, all the study says it's very thin. As in, they meet one gay person, they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess.
Yeah, like
it's very thin. So never, my bad. I guess I had it wrong. So it's plastic.
Yeah.
So like that's why it's like it was bad in the '60s and got better. Like homophobia in the white community is like stable and strong. Homophobia in the black community is like, all right, so we met one gay person, and then it turns out that like.
He or she is just like,
and especially black men, black men, very plastic in their homophobia. It's like, oh, all right, well,
and if you want to ask yourself if that's true, look at a basketball game with how many lesbians are out there shooting ball with the boys, you know, and handing ass whoopings out, and nobody's having an issue with it.
Well, I guess
she's just amazing at it.
Yeah, I guess. I used to think stuff when I was a kid, but then I played ball with a lesbian, and then I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
She likes women, I like women, it makes sense. So
I've heard that conversation too. Hold up.
Black homophobia in the black community is thin. Even as wide as it might seem to be, it's very, very thin. Because black men change their minds. So that's what I have to say about like that being weaponized against black people. What I do have to say is I think, and I want numbers on this, I can't tell you for certain, but I know that there are more people going from men to women than there are women to men. That's all throughout all ethnicities. I would not be shocked if it's disproportionately in the black community, people going from
male to female.
Male to female. Have I met one female to male trans? Have you?
Yes, but I mean.
Female to male?
Female. Oh, black?
Black.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you got to try.
Yeah.
Like, I
don't It is because I have an excellent network in that community.
Yeah. Like I don't have to try to think of all the male to females I know. Like who've gone that way.
Oh yeah, no, that literally.
I can name names, but like going that way, like.
I mean, we all went to school with that person.
Yeah.
And it was okay. It were no issues. You know, everyone understood.
Right. But like there are so many more male to female than female to male. I wonder if like it's kind of like there's some bit of it that like emerges from the social pressure of being a black man. Like I'd say it. I haven't seen the data on this. I just wouldn't be surprised. Not only is it being a black man, it's an unsympathetic struggle. It's a punishing one, and it's like I don't know. Transitioning might be an escape route if you're already disposed that way.
Well, I mean, because like there are a lot of people who wouldn't do a full transition, would just. I've spoken to trans people who have said, you know, I have no intentions of fully transitioning.
Right.
Like that's not my goal. That's why we started recognizing non-binary people and stuff like that. And I think if you look at the black queer community, you'll find that a lot of them are non-binary versus trans.
Okay. all the way. Yeah, because but what they're not is straight black men, or being confused for straight black men.
No,
because nobody wants to be that. That's not a good thing to be.
And I have to call out other black gay guys because we have a really bad habit of pretending that we have a seat at the table that is black feminism, and we do not. Let me repeat that repeatedly. That is not our table. Black masculinity is still our table, gay or not, and that's where we need to be putting in the work to help. Do not jump on the bandwagon.
I think so, but so you need a therapist who actually understands your struggle, and Revolution is the only therapy for black people. So I like to think that I've helped people's mental health here every Friday, 4 p.m. And if you like the work I do, please feel free to go over to thefunkyacademic.com and kick in for $5, $15, or $50 a month. And because I'm providing a service. And the price of revolution is often social, which means that the people who want me to the people who want to take me down can't take down the ideas, but they can make sure it's pretty hard for me to get a job in my future life. So I'm going to need you, if you support my work, to go to thefunkyacademic.com and kick in a little bit. $5, $15, $50 a month, because I keep doing this. I think I took 1 week off, or the show took 1 week off all of 2018. That was last week.
Since I've been here, that's the only we've had a couple of guests.
Yes. But yeah, no, I try to give you a show every Friday at 4 p.m. It's a pretty steady date. And I try to do it, and I try to make it content, and I make it the quality of content you're not going to get from Roland Martin or I don't know.
Anybody on MSNBC?
Or anybody on MSNBC. I try to tell you the truth. And the truth is, black people, we have mental health problems, but our mental health problems might not be able to be solved by anybody who's not good at talking about black life and the stressors, the ecological stressors of black life. And that means substance abuse, and that means generational poverty. That means understanding that freedom is not just a matter of yourself being, okay financially, but you're not free unless you're around other people who are okay in all those ways. Other black people too, who are okay in all of those ways. And you can't be one sane person around a bunch of crazy. And so
it's like expecting water to stay clean when there's oil in it.
So there's a lot of crazy making narratives out there, because since the only way to black mental health is revolution, and you have to understand that there are a lot of counter-revolutionary influences without and within the black community. Like I said, I blame black people last. So we're not going to talk about so much the ones within the black community. But the ones without the black community are numerous and strong. They don't want you to read Amos Wilson. They don't want you to read Frances Cress Welsing is the black psychologist. Look, go to YouTube and just put in Frances Cress Wesling's name. This sister is all right. If all of your teachers were Frances Cress Welsing, we would not have our problems. We would not have all of our therapists were Frances Cress Welsing, we would not have our issues. So, thank goodness for YouTube. Just go ahead and put her name in, Frances Cress Welsing, and Amos Wilson, Bobby Wright. These are black people, black therapists, black psychologists who understand that unless you understand white supremacy, anything else you learn in psychology is BS if you're black. And Franz Fanon. All of them, black psychologists who understand that the problem with black psychology can't be helped with more baths or bath salts or The Secret, a corkboard, or I don't know, whatever, yoga, whatever it is white people do.
Oh my God, if I hear one more time how I need to just sit down and make a corkboard, and not from my therapist, never from my therapist, or a planning book.
No, our problem is not our plans. Our problem is we're being targeted, and if it's not targeting us, it's targeting everybody around us. So we can't be with the people around us. And in order to be healthy, you need to have healthy relationships with people around us. So the best thing we could do is get in the revolution, because at least you won't be as confused. And so you'll have other problems, but your mental health and your clarity will not be one of them. And that's not nothing. That's not nothing, black people. So you'll know exactly who your enemy is and how it's working on your mind.
And ask yourself, how much are you blaming your, like, I know people got to learn to be selfish sometime when it comes to their health. And I'm the worst at this, so anyone looking at me currently, I understand. You've been taught to blame yourself. In kindergarten,
blame white people instead.
I remember the speech.
Blame white people instead. I'll tell you right now. You've been taught to blame yourself. Blame white people instead.
Look at the root. Yeah, look at the root of your problem. Oh, look, I'm poor. Well, why am I poor? Why am I generationally poor? Why?
Like, everyone who's not an anomaly around you, and don't talk to those Negroes on student loans because they're broke too. They're just on student loans. So, like, it's not just, now, why is everything more stressful for you than, like, the American life should be? And it's not you. It ain't you. But every institution's organized to blame you. Or even blame black communities. Well, if we just put our pennies together, if we just got everything. No, black people. That doesn't work. We don't have enough pennies.
We could have Oprah pennies and still not have enough pennies.
If black people... exactly. If black people got all of their money together, we could just compete with Amazon.
Yeah.
And you got Amazon driving white businesses out of it. If we put all our money together, we can compete with Walmart.
Let's be clear.
No, that's not how this works.
If the Waltons or Jeff Bezos woke up with Oprah money tomorrow, they'd kill themselves.
Yeah.
And Oprah's our goal that people keep tossing out there like, I want to be as rich as Oprah.
And Oprah made her money by selling out black people, by being on the train, by being part of the ideological control. So I'm just telling you that. Last words. What's up? Black mental health.
It ain't you.
It ain't you.
Like, it ain't you.
It ain't you. It's your problem, but you're not the problem.
And like I said, if you can't have this conversation, the opening session, I don't care how uncomfortable that therapist gets. If they can't have this conversation with you, walk away because they're not the one.
Yeah, they might be doing damage.
Yeah.
People don't understand. It's like these teachers in schools. If you don't get the problem, you're actually doing damage. You're actually just adding to the confusion. So we need black therapists, and it's funny because like I know a lot of therapists. I know a ton of therapists, and black therapists often, unfortunately, like too many black teachers, they know they have to get their money by making white people feel comfortable. So, like, I don't know. Not all black therapists are going to be about that life. So,
ask,
and go ahead. And if you're bookish, like I put out some pretty good names: Bobby Wright, Amos Wilson, Francis Cuss Wessling, and Franz Fanon. Those are 4 good names. 4 good names. If you're black and you care about mental health, like put those names in YouTube. I'm sure someone on the chat write all those names down. They'll help you get you right, or at least understand the structure of the problem. Because if you can understand the structure of the problem, you might be able to ask better questions of whomever you're around.
However, what I will also add, everything doesn't get better right away.
No!
Because you just see more now.
No. You're less confused about the problem.
Yeah.
You still have the problem.
But
it's still better than being confused about the problem because you're not confusing other people.
Yes.
Like I said, yeah, okay?
There's this recalibration that has to happen once you stop being confused yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to stop being confused ourselves, so we need to be recalibrated. And then, like, being in the revolution. And we might not get there. But at least your kids won't be confused. At least your neighborhood won't be confused about who the problem is.
What was
and the problem is white people. And, not because of their biology. They weren't made to be the problem, but they've been socialized into being the problem. So they are still the problem. And just, you need to get your cut from America. And then imagine how less stressful and more healthful your life will be when you have, like, access to, a grocery store with vegetables and access to other black people with money. Not just you, it's everyone around you is black and like stable, working a good job, and all, like your problems are political black people.
And don't listen to black leaders that tell you that can't be done. It may take generations.
But like that's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's not going to come from like getting our little pennies together. It's going to come from like getting in white people's faces and demanding our cut and taking it. All right. So with that, I'm going to cut you loose. Thank you for your time. Please, if you like anything I'm doing, go to thefunkyacademic.com and donate because we have bills to pay.